The We Mean Business Coalition works towards ensuring that corporate climate commitments are not just announced, but structured, verified and held to account across sectors and geographies. This in order to make the accountability architecture of the transition real. The Global South has a big role to play in this transition owing to its huge size. Furthermore, businesses need to bridge the financing gap for green innovation in this region in order to make the transition meaningful globally.
Well, thank you very much for the invitation to be here. It's a real pleasure to be here in Delhi at the WSDS. We are indeed an international business coalition working with businesses around the world, partly to put in place this kind of accountability that you talk about, but also to really make sure that the voices of the leading businesses, those that really see their future in energy transition and their future competitiveness in that area, make sure that those voices are being heard by policymakers, both internationally and also domestically in countries, including here in India. In terms of your question, what can business do more to stimulate that? Well, I think making sure that their voices are heard in the political sphere, that really there is an enormous part of the business side that wants to see this transition, and we see that increasingly across the Global South. We were originally a Global North business coalition, but increasingly we see the international center of gravity shifting, and we're arriving here in India. We see so much opportunity, sense of opportunity amongst the business community, that to show this kind of leadership and to put the investment where they see the future in the energy transition as their future source of security and competitiveness. Obviously, the business conditions are not necessarily so easy. There is a high cost of capital. There are other challenges facing businesses looking to invest. So really making sure that the policymakers hear the voices of these businesses is one important factor that they can be done. And we see, as we look across the Global South, we did a big business polling exercise last year, hundreds of executives here in India. 99% of them said that they would want to see a fast transition to renewable energy, provided that the policy signals are leading them in that direction. So yeah, really making sure that those voices are heard is a big part of what businesses can do here.
Solar energy is now among the cheapest sources of new electricity. Solar and wind electrification can scale on the back of falling technology costs, creating opportunities for manufacturing expansion and greater energy sovereignty. The development model of India offers lessons for other emerging economies to follow.
It's actually a very inspiring story what's happened in India's journey in the energy transition and renewables in the last 10 or 15 years, and I think there's a lot that can be used as a model for other countries. And when we look at things like the clarity of the policy direction through the national missions that were established, and how clear that was, and then the stability of policy signals and how they are implemented at the state level, the subnational level around the country, and that there are reliable institutions to be backing up those policies, has really been successful in mobilizing private capital into this sector, mostly domestic private capital, but also international finance. So as we look overseas, I think it's important this model can be looked at by other countries who are not trying to just use the Global North policy norms, which may not be appropriate to the conditions that we see in the Global South. Things like higher cost of capital, things like more challenges around grid integration, things around the importance of energy access and first-time electrification for access and these kind of things. So I think there's a lot that can be learned from India's model, and we're actually seeing that start to happen. If you look in East Africa, India model for renewable auctions is being rolled out in some countries there, and I think this is a great model for how this South-South cooperation can happen in future.
The pace and scale of adoption of electrification is something businesses need to determine through adequate capital allocation, decisions, technology choices, and supply chain transformations.
We see businesses really looking the technology costs in energy transition are falling. In many cases they are competitive, and it can be the cheapest form of new power generation in many areas. But we need the policy landscape to be conducive to driving that investment at scale. So businesses are looking to where the policy frameworks are strongest. We saw this again, the polling of business attitudes I mentioned before. We saw globally across that sample, 50% of businesses said they would be prepared to move countries to shift their investments, either their operations or their supply chains, to places where the policy framework is more conducive to the energy transition. So really, when they're looking at how to allocate their capital and their investment decisions, the policy frameworks are key. we're seeing this actually particularly on this agenda of electrification, which we're extremely excited about as a key element of how we can accelerate the energy transition in a pragmatic, cost-competitive way. By electrification, we mean end users which are currently using fossil fuels at the point of use, such as in transport, buildings, industry, switching those to electric sources in order to provide more demand for the renewable electricity. And this is a key area where the policy signal is absolutely crucial. We need, businesses are looking for where the incentives are aligned and where they're encouraged to make these shifts in a way that won't lead to higher energy costs, higher electricity costs for those businesses concerned.